Today we begin our three-part series dedicated to Final Fantasy IV: The Complete Collection. We'll be starting off with Final Fantasy IV, which was originally released in North America as Final Fantasy II back in 1991 on the Super NES. While Final Fantasy IV would be released on a wide array of different platforms over the years, this version really is the best way to experience the game as of the time of this recording. Not only do you get tons of goodies thrown in for good measure, but you also get revamped visuals, a great new soundtrack, and above all else, 2 additional games thrown in for good measure. This game could potentially stay in your PSP for well over 100 hours if you become engrossed in everything it has to offer. To begin, Final Fantasy IV: The Complete Collection is separated into 3 different games: Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy IV Interlude, and Final Fantasy IV: The After Years. Final Fantasy IV, as in the original game, the one that hit the SNES and blew my mind back in '91, is remastered and is a fantastic trip down memory lane. For many people, this was the first Final Fantasy game that would essentially pave the way for not only the rest of the series, but for console RPGs in general. It was the first time I had experienced a Final Fantasy with a character-driven narrative. These weren't just nameless characters like I had experienced in Final Fantasy I on the NES. No, this time around these were living, breathing people with names, who loved and were loved by others. It was an incredible tale, and while I would later learn that Final Fantasy II featured a more character-driven plot, I wouldn't say the two are comparable, as this one feels so much more interactive and fleshed out. You take on the role of Cecil, the leader of the Red Wings, which is an airship squadron of Baron, the most powerful country in the entire world. You're currently on a quest to locate and capture all the crystals you can find. However, lately the cost of capturing these crystals has resulted in countless innocent lives being lost. As such, Cecil is starting to have a change of heart, and he must decide whether his loyalty to his king and country is stronger than that of his own beliefs. From there, the story becomes something much, much larger, but I'll leave that for you to discover. Final Fantasy IV introduced the Active Time Battle system. This means if you don't select your actions quickly enough, the enemy can continue to attack you. It was used in many later games Square would develop, and many people would copy this system moving forward. Final Fantasy IV also featured a party of 5, which was really unique for the time. The rest of the combat and progression is like the rest of the series, whereby you visit towns, dungeons, and caves and get sucked into random encounters, and yes, the encounter rate is quite high. What makes Final Fantasy IV so special is just how well the gameplay is connected to the story and the world Square created. It all comes together in one incredible package. And that package has a nice new coat of paint on it, and coupled with the phenomenal soundtrack, Final Fantasy IV is considered one of the very best Final Fantasy games, and for good reason. It's incredible. Personally, it is my 3rd favorite Final Fantasy game, only behind Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VI. The sprite work looks fantastic, and of all the releases, this is the one you need to play to experience this game. Truly, this is one beautiful game, and it pains me when I think of how poorly Final Fantasy VI was remastered. That game looked absolutely horrible by comparison. Now I know what some of you must be thinking. Didn't Final Fantasy IV also get a release on the DS and in 3D, a la Final Fantasy III? And the answer is yes, yes it did. In 2008, the DS received a 3D remake of Final Fantasy IV, and this bad boy was released in 2011, so how come we didn't get this 3D version? Well, the truth is, I much prefer what we got here. The 3D version, while nice, didn't play with your nostalgia as much as this one does. The fact that the whole package looks so similar doesn't hurt either. This way, all 3 games feel cohesive and complete, for lack of a better term. Final Fantasy IV is a masterpiece in game design that has truly held up perfectly all these years later. The complete collection can be had both digitally and on UMD, and regardless of how you play, this is one you need to. You deserve it to yourself and the developers. So join us next week as we continue our look at Final Fantasy IV Complete with a look at Final Fantasy IV The Interlude.
You